Dr. Robert Bob Sullivan stood at the edge of the vast Kazakh steppe, watching the sunrise paint the endless grasslands in shades of gold and amber. At 54, the veterinarian from Montana had spent most of his career working with cattle ranchers in the American West, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for the profound beauty and harsh realities of life in this remote corner of Kazakhstan, where traditional nomadic herding still shaped daily existence. Bob's journey to Kazakhstan had begun with professional opportunity and personal escape. His wife of 26 years, Susan, had died of ovarian cancer 18 months earlier, leaving him devastated and questioning everything about his carefully structured life in Billings. Their two adult children lived in distant cities, pursuing careers that left little time for their grieving father, and Bob found himself increasingly isolated in the house that held too many memories. The opportunity to work with the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization had come through his old veterinary school classmate, Dr. James Mitchell, who was coordinating international livestock development programs across Central Asia. "Bob," James had said during a phone call, "we need someone with your experience in rangeland management and large animal veterinary medicine. Kazakhstan is trying to modernize their livestock industry while preserving traditional practices. It's challenging work, but it might be exactly what you need." Bob had accepted the 2-year assignment partly for professional reasons, but mostly because he needed to be somewhere that demanded complete attention and left no time for dwelling on loss. The project involved working with traditional herders to improve animal health, breeding practices, and pasture management while respecting cultural traditions that had sustained nomadic life for over 1,000 years. His assignment took him to the Mangistau province in western Kazakhstan, a region of dramatic landscapes where ancient trade routes had once connected east and west. The area was sparsely populated, with small settlements scattered across steppes that stretched to the horizon, broken only by occasional oil installations that represented Kazakhstan's modern economy. Bob's base of operations was the town of Akhtau, a Soviet-era city built around oil production. But his real work took place in the rural areas where traditional herders maintained flocks of sheep, goats, and camels using methods passed down through generations. The cultural complexity was immediately apparent. This was a society balancing ancient nomadic traditions with Soviet-era modernization and post-independence integration into global markets. It was while visiting a herding family about 50 kilometers from Akhtau that Bob first encountered Agarim Nazarbayeva, the young woman who would transform his understanding of love, cultural adaptation, and the possibilities for happiness in the later stages of life. The meeting took place during a veterinary consultation for a flock suffering from parasitic infections that threatened the family's livelihood. Agarim was 26, the eldest daughter of Murat Nazarbayev, a respected herder who maintained traditional practices while adapting to contemporary economic realities. She served as translator and cultural liaison for her family's interactions with government officials and international organizations, having completed university studies in Almaty before returning to help manage the family's herding operations. What struck Bob immediately was not just Agarim's beauty, though she was undeniably lovely, with the high cheekbones and dark eyes characteristic of Kazakh women, but her obvious intelligence and competence. She translated complex veterinary concepts between English, Russian, and Kazakh while demonstrating sophisticated understanding of animal husbandry and rangeland ecology. "Dr. Sullivan," she said in excellent English, "my father is grateful for your help with our sick animals. But he wants you to understand that we have traditional methods for treating livestock diseases. He hopes you can work with our knowledge, not replace it." Bob was impressed by her diplomatic skills and her obvious respect for both traditional practices and modern veterinary science. "I'm here to learn as much as to teach," he replied. "Traditional herding practices have sustained life on these steppes for centuries. I want to understand how modern veterinary medicine can complement rather than replace your family's knowledge." Over the following days, As Bob worked to diagnose and treat the flock's health problems, he found himself learning as much from Agarim and her family as he was teaching. Their understanding of animal behavior, seasonal migration patterns, and natural remedies was based on generations of careful observation and practical experience. Agarim proved invaluable as both translator and cultural guide, explaining the social and economic context that shaped herding decisions while helping Bob understand how his recommendations could be implemented within traditional family structures and community networks. "You are different from other foreign experts we have met," Agarim observed during one of their conversations. "Most want to change everything quickly to make our methods more like Western practices. You seem to understand that some changes help while others might cause harm." Bob found himself sharing more about his background and philosophy than he typically did with colleagues. He told Agarim about his work with ranchers in Montana, his belief that sustainable livestock practices required understanding local conditions and respecting accumulated wisdom, and his own process of learning to adapt to unfamiliar environments. As weeks turned into months and Bob's work took him regularly to the Nazarbayev family's grazing areas, his relationship with Agarim deepened beyond professional collaboration. She began including him in family celebrations, teaching him basic Kazakh phrases, and sharing insights about nomadic culture that enriched his understanding of the complex society he was working to serve. The turning point came during Nowruz, the traditional Kazakh New Year celebration that marks the spring equinox and the renewal of life on the steppe. Bob was invited to participate in the three-day festival not as a foreign observer, but as a friend of the family, an honor that reflected his acceptance by the herding community. The celebration included traditional games, horse racing, elaborate feasts featuring mare's milk and roasted lamb, and ceremonies that connected participants to both their ancestors and hopes for the future. Bob found himself moved by the profound sense of cultural continuity and community solidarity that the festival represented. On the final evening of Nowruz, as families gathered around bonfires under a sky brilliant with stars, Agarim approached Bob with obvious nervousness and excitement. "Dr. Sullivan," she began formally, "I need to speak with you about something very important that concerns my feelings and my future." Bob's heart began racing as he sensed the direction this conversation might take. "I have developed feelings for you that go beyond friendship or professional respect," Agarim continued. "I know this may seem impossible because of the age difference and cultural differences, but I wanted you to know that I care for you deeply." Bob was stunned by her directness and courage. "Agarim, I'm honored by your feelings, and I have to admit that I've developed strong feelings for you as well. But I'm 54 years old, and you're a young woman with your whole life ahead of you. What kind of future could we possibly have together?" Agarim's response reflected the practical wisdom that came from growing up in a culture that valued both tradition and adaptation. In our culture, marriage is not just about age or romance. It's about building partnerships that strengthen families and communities. You have knowledge and resources that could help our family thrive, while I have cultural understanding and connections that could help your work succeed. The conversation that followed was unlike anything in Bob's experience. Agarim explained that she had discussed her feelings with her parents, who had observed Bob's character and contributions to their community. Traditional Kazakh culture allowed for significant age differences in marriage when such unions served practical and emotional needs. "My father says you are a man of honor who treats our family with respect," Agarim told him. "My mother believes you would be a good husband who would support my education and allow me to continue helping our community. They give their blessing if you are interested in marriage." Bob requested time to consider her proposal, and Agarim graciously agreed to give him space for reflection. Over the following weeks, he found himself examining every assumption he had held about love, marriage, and appropriate life choices for a man his age. The practical advantages of such a marriage were undeniable. Agarim's cultural knowledge and language skills would be invaluable for Bob's continued work in Central Asia. Her family connections would provide the kind of community integration that foreign experts rarely achieved. Her intelligence and education made her an ideal partner for someone whose work required constant learning and adaptation. More importantly, Bob was beginning to understand that he had fallen in love not just with Agarim as an individual, but with her way of life, her deep connection to the land and animals, and her vision of combining traditional wisdom with contemporary opportunities. After a month of careful consideration and extensive discussions with both Agarim and her family, Bob made his decision. He would extend his assignment in Kazakhstan indefinitely and marry Agarim, following Kazakh customs, while also ensuring that their union would be recognized internationally. The wedding ceremony was a week-long celebration that showcased the best of Kazakh cultural traditions, held during the summer when families from across the region could travel to attend. Traditional Islamic elements were blended with pre-Islamic Kazakh rituals and contemporary celebrations that reflected the bride and groom's international backgrounds. Bob found himself learning not just wedding rituals, but the deeper cultural meanings behind each tradition. The blessing of livestock represented hopes for prosperity and abundance. The exchange of traditional clothing symbolized the merging of different worlds. The horseback ceremonies connected their marriage to the nomadic heritage that shaped Kazakh identity. The logistics of their married life required careful planning and respect for both American and Kazakh cultural expectations. Bob used his savings and veterinary income to purchase land near Agarim's family, building a house that combined modern amenities with traditional Kazakh architectural elements. The first year of marriage was challenging, but ultimately successful. Bob had to learn not just to navigate a relationship with a much younger wife from a completely different culture, but to adapt to extended family obligations and community responsibilities that were central to Kazakh social life. Agarim proved to be an ideal partner for Bob's professional work while maintaining her own identity and aspirations. She completed a master's degree in agricultural development through correspondence courses while serving as Bob's primary cultural advisor and translator for expanding veterinary programs throughout the region. The first pregnancy announcement came 18 months after their wedding. At 28, Agarim was excited about motherhood while also concerned about maintaining her educational and professional goals. Bob, at 56, was overwhelmed by the prospect of becoming a father again after his children from his first marriage were now adults with their own families. "I can't believe I'm going to be a dad again at my age," Bob confided to Dr. Mitchell during one of his colleagues' visits to Kazakhstan. "Age brings wisdom and patience," his old friend replied. "Your child will benefit from having a father who understands what truly matters in life." Agarim's pregnancy proceeded smoothly, with traditional Kazakh prenatal practices supplemented by modern medical care from the regional hospital in Aktau. The entire extended family and community participated in preparing for the baby's arrival, following customs that emphasized collective responsibility for children's welfare. The baby, a healthy son they named Armin, meaning dream in Kazakh, was born during the autumn migration season when herding families moved their flocks to winter pastures. Bob was present for the delivery, conducted in their home according to traditional practices, an experience that transformed his understanding of love, family, and cultural integration. Armin's arrival was celebrated throughout the herding community as a symbol of successful cultural bridge building and hope for the future. The child represented both American and Kazakh heritage while being firmly rooted in the steps that would shape his upbringing. 2 years later, Agarim gave birth to a daughter they named Ida, meaning moon in Kazakh. The arrival of 2 children created new challenges, but also brought tremendous joy to their household and the broader community. The children grew up trilingual, speaking English, Russian, and Kazakh with equal fluency. They learned to ride horses before they could walk steadily, developing the equestrian skills that were central to Kazakh culture while also receiving modern education that would provide opportunities beyond the steppes. Bob's veterinary practice had expanded significantly with Agram's help and cultural connections. His approach to livestock development, which emphasized working with traditional practices rather than replacing them, had earned recognition from international development organizations and the Kazakh government. The success of their programs allowed them to contribute significantly to community development projects. They helped establish veterinary training programs for young Kazakhs, supported improvements to rural schools, and created marketing cooperatives that helped herders get better prices for their livestock products. Bob's relationship with his American family had evolved significantly over the years. His adult children from his first marriage had initially been bewildered by their father's choices, but visits to Kazakhstan had won them over. They could see that Bob was healthier and more purposeful than he had been since their mother's death. Dad has found his second calling, his daughter told friends back in Montana. He's not just working in an exotic location. He's building something meaningful that combines everything he learned in his first career with new opportunities to make a real difference. The economic impact of Bob's presence in western Kazakhstan had been substantial, but carefully focused on supporting traditional livelihoods while creating new opportunities. His veterinary programs had improved livestock productivity for hundreds of herding families, while his cultural sensitivity had earned respect from government officials and community leaders. Most importantly, Bob's family had become a symbol of successful cross-cultural integration that inspired other international development workers in Central Asia. Their story demonstrated that meaningful relationships could develop across vast differences in age, culture, and background when approached with genuine respect and commitment to mutual learning. As Bob approached his 60th birthday, he often reflected on the livestock development project that had brought him to Kazakhstan seeking escape from grief. Instead, he had discovered that the most important development work involved nurturing love, family, and cultural understanding rather than simply improving technical practices. The children playing in the courtyard of their home spoke languages that connected them to both Montana ranching traditions and Kazakh nomadic heritage. They moved between modern veterinary techniques and traditional animal husbandry with equal comfort, embodying the successful fusion of knowledge systems that their family represented. Agram had completed her master's degree and was working on a doctoral dissertation about sustainable rangeland management, combining traditional Kazakh ecological knowledge with contemporary conservation science. Her research was gaining international attention, while her practical work was helping herding communities adapt to climate change and market pressures. When I first came to Kazakhstan, Bob told a development magazine interviewing him about cross-cultural cooperation, I thought I was teaching veterinary medicine. Instead, I learned about family, about the importance of respecting wisdom that comes from generations of experience, and about the fact that love doesn't follow the timeline we plan for it. Agram often reflected on how their marriage had enhanced rather than limited her opportunities for education and community service. Many people assumed I was sacrificing my future by marrying an older foreign man, she observed during a group interview. Instead, Bob's support and resources have allowed me to pursue advanced education while contributing to my community in ways I never could have managed alone. The extended family emphasized the intergenerational benefits. Bob brings knowledge and connections that help our entire community, while Agram provides cultural understanding that makes his work effective. Their children are growing up understanding both worlds, which will serve them well in Kazakhstan's changing economy. As the sun set over the endless steppe, visible from the windows of their home built where traditional grazing routes had crossed for centuries, Bob Sullivan, now known throughout the region as Bolotbek, meaning steel strong in Kazakh, felt the deep satisfaction of a life that had found unexpected meaning in its later chapters. The veterinarian who had come to Kazakhstan seeking professional purpose had instead discovered love, family, and cultural integration in forms that challenged every assumption about appropriate choices for widowed men approaching 60. His story continued to inspire discussions about cross-cultural marriage, international development, and the possibilities for finding meaning through relationships that honor both tradition and innovation. The steps where his journey of discovery had begun remained central to his daily life, but they had become much more than places of work and learning. They were where he had first witnessed the wisdom and strength of traditional cultures, and where he had been welcomed into a way of life that valued both ancient knowledge and contemporary adaptation. His legacy would live on not just in the veterinary programs he had established and the research he had supported, but in the children who carried both American and Kazakh heritage, in the improved livestock practices that continued to support herding communities, and in the demonstration that love could flourish across the most unlikely combinations of age, culture, and circumstance when nurtured with respect, commitment, and shared dedication to building something meaningful together. The young woman who had first caught his attention with her intelligence and cultural pride had become his partner in proving that the human heart was capable of migrations as successful and meaningful as any undertaken by the nomadic herders whose wisdom had sustained life on the steppes for countless generations, creating new forms of family and community that honored the past while building hopefully toward the future.